Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here, and today we'll be taking on the role of bacterial pathogens attacking the human body. But that body isn't defenseless. Once triggered, the immune system fights to destroy the pathogens and eventually achieve immunity. Pathogenesis is a deck building game for 1 to 4 players. It's for ages 14 and up, takes 30 to 60 minutes to play, and is published by Games. You'll be trying to build up your deck of pathogens and virulence factors to protect themselves from the immune system and maximize the damage they do to the body before they run out of time. Now, this game is on Kickstarter right now for its 2nd edition, which has updated the immune system, an expansion, and a 2.0 update pack for the original backers to update their game to the 2nd edition rules. Now I'm going to show you how the game works, and I'll see you on the other side. Now this is a Kickstarter preview, so any art and components you see here are subject to change, so you'll want to check the Kickstarter link in the description of this video to see all the final art and components. Now this game can be played in competitive, cooperative, solo, and team play. I'm going to go over the competitive version here, and I basically have this set up for a 3-player game. Now what we see here is there's 3 different body locations or tracts known as the gastrointestinal, the respiratory, and the tissue. Now these are guarded by barriers that you're going to need to get through using your pathogens and trying to defeat these in order to then do damage to these different systems and taking points for doing so. However, the body is also going to fight back with some immune systems throughout the game as well. Now we also have an active gene pool set up here. Now here are basically pathogen supply decks that are going to be in every game that you can buy and help your deck building going, because in this game you're going to be buying cards and using those to power up your deck in order to try to damage the different body locations. And there's also 5 cards that are basically the active gene pool that will come up that you can also purchase, and those cycle through a deck throughout the game. Now each player is going to start with a starting deck of 10 cards. Now these are going to be made up of cards that are new DNA and some pathogens. Now these new DNA cards, there's actually more than this. You get to select from multiples of these to get your 10 card starting deck with 6 new DNA and 4 pathogens. We'll talk about what these do more in just a moment. Now this is a deck building game, so all 10 cards are here in a draw deck. To start the game, each player is going to draw 5 cards, and then when it becomes your turn at the beginning of each of your turns, you're also going to, by default, have 5 cards to choose from, and then you're going to have a draw deck here. Now the game itself, each player is going to go through 5 phases. Now for the beginning of the game, you actually go through less of these, so let me walk through how this works. In the first phase, you can buy cards and play cards from your hand. So here, let's say these are the 5 cards that are in my hand. I'm going to zoom in on here on just a couple of them so we can look at a little bit closer example. But what you're going to do is use these 5 cards for different possible things. You don't have to use them all. You can even keep some of them for your next turn. But let's show you how some of these work. Now these new DNA cards do one of 3 things. One is you can spend them as genetic value. So here we see a little DNA symbol with the number 1. This means I could spend this card and put it just down in front of me like this, and I could buy one of these cards because in the bottom right is the cost. Both of those are 1s, and there's other cards actually above there that you might be able to buy as well. Probably not for 1s though. But you could actually put a few of those cards together. Let's say I had 3 of them in my hand. I could actually play all 3. Each of these is worth 1. I could maybe buy 3 of these different ones that say 1, or maybe a 3, or maybe a 2 and a 1. So you can spend them as sort of a currency. That's one of the 3 ways to use the new DNA cards. Another way to use the card is this icon up here because it has like a little slash here. We can use this to discard any 1 card from this active gene pool here, and we would take the card out, discard it, and then fill it up with this draw deck. Or for a third thing, you could trash this card and discard this to replace all 5 cards here. Now there's a little play area that has a lot of the icons here, and this says trash. So this really removes this from the game. A lot of the times you'll be discarding cards into a discard pile, and over the course of the game those will come back into your hands that you can use, but this is a very powerful ability, so you have to actually get rid of this card all the way out of the game, but you could actually put all these into a discard, put 5 new ones out to give you some more options there. And these new DNA cards do different things like that, like, hey, trash this to discard any number of cards from your hand and draw as many as you discarded, trying to cycle through your deck, if you will. Now, the pathogen cards work differently. You're going to be playing these down, and a lot of times what you're doing is trying to use its attack value to go ahead and try to damage the different body locations that we talked about, or you can always use them for the genetic value to try to purchase more cards. Now, when you do purchase a card, you spend it, that amount, and you get the card here. So I'm going to spend this one for one and get this one. Now, these don't go in your discard pile yet, but you do put them in your sort of play area to make sure you know that you've bought it, and then a new card will come out like this. We'll talk more about these cards later, but that's how you purchase cards. You simply purchase them from here and put them in your play area for now. They'll go into your discard pile at the end of your turn. And then up here in this row, these are the ones that are in every game, and you can purchase these. These are more powerful pathogens that are going to give you more attack and more defense value to help you out. That we'll show you how these work in a moment. Now, phases 2 and 3 we actually skip for the beginning part of the game. We'll talk about that later, but now you're going to attack. So I've played 2 pathogens down. I did not use them for their genetic value. We're actually going to use them to try to attack. The red here is an attack value, and the blue is a defense value that you see on the player aid there. So here we have an opportunistic pathogen, and each one has 2 attack. Now notice that these cards are sort of a purple color. But also notice the 3 different body locations are green, blue, and pink, and there's also green, blue, and pink cards that sort of go along with them. These are pathogens that are specific for fighting different parts of the body, where the ones that we have, these purple ones, these can be used against any of the different body locations. So we have played these 2 cards. Now they have a total attack of 4, and again, since they can fight any location, we're going to have them both fight this tissue location for a total of 4. Now let's spin this card here. Now these cards, each body location has a barrier, and it's a certain amount of cards that you have to get through before you can start doing damage to it and taking points. Now this shows you the amount of defense. This was 3. If you remember, we did a 4 of attack, so we're going to be able to actually destroy this card here. Now when you destroy these cards, it'll say take 3 of these genetic value tokens to use on a future turn. Now this is just like spending the genetic values on your cards, but basically now you have more currency to buy more cards, so it's a good thing to get these. Now this is going to be completely discarded, and the next one will flip up like this. Now if I still had some leftover and or some more attack from pathogens, I could continue to attack and continue to do more damage like that. So then you go to a cleanup phase, and all the cards that you've used and or don't want in your hand, you would discard them down to your discard pile. This would be your draw deck, so you would draw back up to 5 cards, but you could hold on to cards that you didn't want to use this turn because they might match together better with other cards later. So you just basically draw back up to 5, and all the cards that you've sort of used will go there. However, the pathogens that you've played, they will stay out as long as they're alive. We're going to talk about in future phases how these actually can be destroyed, but if they are not destroyed that round, they stay out, so they can continue to try to attack in future rounds. Now we told you that at the beginning of the game there's these different barrier cards. As soon as somebody gets the last barrier card and destroys it from any of the 3 body locations, well, now you've activated a new part of the game. We have the phases 2 and 3 where you can do some preemptive attacks, but the body's immune system is going to attack back starting on this player's next turn, and every player after that will have to go through these different phases. So let's talk about what these do. So what happens in phase 2 is a preemptive attack. Some cards have this icon, which means you can attack it before the immune system attacks you. So you could essentially use this to play on any pathogen. So essentially, if I had a pathogen here, I could play this basically on it, and then this allows us to preemptively attack the body location before having the immune system attack us first and possibly wipe out this pathogen, which we're going to show you in just a moment. So essentially, it allows you to hit before the immune system does. But after that, or if you didn't have any of those, phase 3, the immune system response, the body would attack your pathogen. So let's pretend that this was not here. Now there's a couple of immune system decks here. They're split out between level 1 and level 2 at the beginning of the game. Level 2 stays as a discard pile, and these will come out and get attached to different players' pathogens. And then as these get used, they go into here as a discard pile, and once this entire deck's completed, you'll have one big discard pile at level 1 and 2s, and then you shuffle all those together and have one big deck. And once that runs out, that large deck, that's one of the ways that the game can trigger the end. So this is also sort of a clock for the game. But you take one of these and attach it to each of your pathogens face down. So we would take one of those cards and basically put it on each of the pathogens I have out and then flip it over. This one has an attack value of 2, but it also says add a C3 token to this pathogen. Now there's lots of different tokens that you might do. Now this one actually does an extra attack, but there's also other types of immune system cards that come out that say, hey, if one of your pathogens has one of these or a C3 token on it, move there instead and increase to 10 attack. So different things will happen, and this will cause other things to chain react at some points too, so they sort of interact with each other. Now here, this shows me how much defense I have. I have 2, but this is going to have a 3 attack. So it has destroyed this, because if it equals this number or is larger, then the immune system has destroyed this pathogen. And in that case, this token would go away, this would go into that discard pile for the immune system, and this would go into my discard pile. You don't lose it for good, it goes in your discard pile and it will be able to come back later in a future turn. Now, if this wasn't destroyed, you don't have any damage tokens or anything, it just fully gets back up to 2 defense on the next turn around. Now the name of the game is points, and now that one of these, the tissue system here doesn't have any barriers, now when you start to do attacks to this, you're going to start taking these point tokens based upon the amount of attack that you actually did to it. And you're going to be collecting these and putting these in front of you. These are essentially points at the end of the game, because the game ends as soon as any one of these 3 body systems completely runs out of tokens. The game will end at the end of that round, and then it's whoever has the most points from all the tokens from any of the body systems will be the winner. Now we talked a little bit about these cards here earlier, that they're more powerful, but some of them can only attack specific body locations. But look for this, they have 2 or 3 of the genetic value, and they have 2/2 for attack defense or 2/3 attack defense, but of course they cost 2 or 4 genetic values, so they cost a little bit more, but they can do a little bit more damage. Also, these cards, if you look at the corners of these, can actually be attached to. Sometimes you can attach like a toxin to them. So now this specific pathogen now has a total of 5 attack. And if this ever gets destroyed by defense, both of these cards or any cards that attach to it would go to your discard pile. Now you might be able to add some trait cards. And this one, you see it goes like this, and this is place another +2 on another gastrointestinal pathogen each turn. So this will help you work on this over and over. But this one, you can also put this one, so it's that sort of purple wild, could go just like this, and then this gives this thing another 2 attack and 1 defense. Now you may have seen these fever cards out in the board. It's a cool little different mechanism is when they go in your hand, some of the immune cards will cause you to place a fever card in your discard pile, or you can decide to purchase one of these fever cards by spending 1 genetic value. But it kind of clogs your hand up a little bit as well, but there are some cards that you can play and attach like this, where this says, hey, you get +2 attack for each fever card played that turn. So they seem like they're not that great, but you can get some cards that actually do things, and it's a cool mechanism in the game. Now, this continues until, again, either all of the tokens from any one of the 3 body systems are gone, and then you add up all the tokens from all 3 body parts, and whoever has the most wins the total values. Or we mentioned that this immune system gets shuffled up after it goes through the deck the first time, but if this ever goes through a second time and the last card is used, then nobody wins and the body wins. Now there's lots of variants and different ways to play the game. We just talked about competitive, but even with that, even with like a single player count of 3, you could do a normal quick, a normal long, hard quick, hard long, and you use a certain amount of cards in the different immune response deck depending on that to change how the game works. But as you can see, there's also solo mode and cooperative mode and team play. Now in the 2-player cooperative mode, you only win if you're able to get all of the tokens out of all 3 of the body locations. So essentially you're racing to try to get all those out before the immune system deck cycles through twice and goes completely empty. Now in the team play, it's a 2 versus 2, and teams will alternate having their players, one player go, then the other, and then the third, and then the fourth essentially going. Now the game will end as soon as any 2 of these body locations runs out of tokens, and then only those 2 tokens are added up by both teams, and whoever has the most is the winner. And it uses the same rules as the cooperative mode, where there's some extra rules I haven't mentioned, but this is it at a high level. And for the solo game, whenever you destroy the top barrier card of any one of these different body locations, the top of the other decks also go down just like that. And then at the beginning of each of your turns, you'll trash any one of these 5 cards and refill it up. And in this solo mode, you win if you completely empty the tokens of any one single body location. Now there's an expansion available in this Kickstarter campaign, and it adds a 4th body tract called the Genitourinary Tract. And here it has the barrier cards like normal, and it has the normal style pathogen for that and the super pathogen like the other cards, but there's some new cards and some new mechanisms here. Now there's some cards that get mixed in with the normal gene pool deck. These are not all the cards, but here's some of them. They all kind of do different things, but they're all tied specifically to that body tract. However, instead of the toxin type cards from the other tracks, this specific one has a new mechanism, new cards called collateral damage. And if it's attached to a pathogen like this, when the immune strikes this pathogen, it's going to do the damage here, so I say 4. But the defense here, because they're together, is 3 plus 2 is 5. If you're able to defend that, this pathogen will actually get the same amount of attack as what that immune was attacking at. So 4, so they get an additional 4. So now this round, when this pathogen attacks the body, it's going to get the 2 plus the 4 for a total of 6. And there are different types of collateral damage cards that are in this expansion. Now, a couple of the modes, like the 2-player co-op and the team play, only uses 3 of these 4, so you get to pick which 3 you want to play with and play with the rules for those specific tracks. There's also an upgrade pack for those of you that have the first edition that want to have the game updated to the new rules and the new immune cards. There's 4 different new type of immune cards that's in the game that comes with those. There's actually 4 copies of each of these different ones. And there's also these different tokens that have attack values on them. So when these attach to pathogens and stuff, you can see clearly what the damage is it's doing. Well, there you have Pathogenesis, and as I've shown in the overview, it's a deck building game with a cool theme that can be played solo, cooperative, competitively, and play as a team. Now, if you'd like to see all of the final art and components and all the different pledge levels available, you can click the link below me in the description of this video, and that will take you right to the Kickstarter page, and I'm sure the fine folks at Wibeye Games would love your support.